Today's topic is telling time. The good news is that you already know most of the vocabulary you will need to do this. You know all of the numbers between 1 and 60, so you're more than halfway there already. There are two methods for telling time, a precise method and a casual method. Both are important to know because you will hear and see times expressed using both methods in Germany. Let's begin with the precise method. As the name implies, you should use this method for time when you are trying to be very precise or exact, telling when the train leaves or what time a class starts, for instance. The trick here is that you will use the hour number, the word Uhr, and then the minute number. So for instance, if it were 3:07, you would use the hour number drei and the minute number 7 to say 3:07. Let's do another. If it were 5:47, you would use the hour number 5 and the minute number 47 to create 5:47. If it were 10:25, you would again use the hour and minute numbers to say 10:25. There's one exception to be aware of. The 1 o'clock hour will be 1 Uhr something, not 1 Uhr something as you might expect. The ein loses its S, so 1:50 becomes 1:50, not 1:50. Also, notice that this method is very precise. It allows you to tell the exact time because you can say exactly the hours and minutes. But how can you tell the difference between morning and evening? English speakers use the abbreviations AM and PM, which stand for ante-meridian and post-meridian, before noon and afternoon, to show the difference between 6 in the morning and 6 in the evening. German speakers, on the other hand, use a 24-hour system, similar to our military time. So anything between midnight and noon would be the hours 1 to 12, and then you keep going up in the afternoon. 13 Uhr, 1300, is 1 p.m., 14 Uhr, 1400 is 2 p.m., 2300, 23 Uhr, is 11 p.m. In other words, that number plus 12 gives you the 24-hour system time for afternoon. Let's look at an example of this. If your digital clock in Germany said 2:20 p.m. or 14:20, in other words, 2:20 p.m., then you would again take the numbers for hours and minutes and say 14:20 Uhr. Now keep in mind that this is the precise method. You wouldn't want to turn this into 2:20 Uhr, because that's 2:20 at night, not 2:20 in the afternoon, and if you're being precise, you should get the time exactly right, so there's no confusion. Let's move on to the casual method. As the name suggests, this is the method you would probably use if you didn't need to be extremely exact about the time. 3:15 instead of 3:15. You may be giving the exact same information, but doing it in the casual method seems a little more natural, especially if you're just having a conversation with friends. To begin with, there are a couple new terms you'll need besides just the numbers. Nach means after, vor means before, or to, or of, as in 7:45 or 9:10. Viertel means quarter, you can see the word vier embedded in that, and halb means half, but this doesn't get used the exact same way as the phrase half past would be in English. More on that in a minute or two. We'll start at the top of the hour. This is the one time where the precise method and the casual method are actually exactly the same. After all, you don't say it's 2:00, and you don't say it's 0 after 2, you just say 2 o'clock. Same principle applies in German. So 1 o'clock would be 1 Uhr, 2 o'clock would be 2 Uhr, 3 o'clock would be 3 Uhr, 5 o'clock would be 5 Uhr, 6 o'clock would be 6 Uhr, etc. 5 minutes later, it's now 5 after the hour. So here we'd say 5 nach, whatever the hour was. 3:05 would become 5 nach 3. 4:05 is 5 nach 4. 5:05 is 5 nach 5. 6:05 is 5 nach 6, and so on. Next, it's 10 after the hour, so now we'll say 10 nach. 7:10 is 10 nach 7. 8:10 is 10 nach 8. 9:10 is 10 nach 9, and so on. Next, you might be expecting 15 nach, since we just had 5 nach and 10 nach. But instead of using the number, German speakers will use the word Viertel here. So 10:15 would become Viertel nach 10, 11:15 would be Viertel nach 11, 12:15 would be Viertel nach 12, and so on. 5 minutes later, it's 20 past the hour. And again, we use the number here. So you could say 20 nach 1 for 1:20. 2:20 would be 20 nach 2. For 3:20, you would say 20 nach 3, and so on. Now, we're actually going to skip ahead here, and we're going to skip to 40 minutes past the hour. However, no one in their right mind actually says it's 40 after 10 or 40 after 11. They say it's 20 of the next hour. This is really important to be careful of. 10:40 is not 20 of 10, that's 9:40. 10:40 is 20 of 11. You're 20 before the next hour, so that's the one you refer to. In German, you'd say 20 vor, 1:40 is 20 vor 2. Notice that we're using the next hour. 2:40 is 20 vor 3, 6:40 is 20 vor 7. At quarter of the hour, use the word Viertel again. So 6:45 is Viertel vor 7, 8:45 is Viertel vor 9, 10:45 is Viertel vor 11, and so on, always referring to the next hour. At 10 of, you say 10 vor. 3:50 would be 10 vor 4, 8:50 would be 10 vor 9, 12:50 would be 10 vor 1, and so on. And at 5 of, you'd say 5 vor. So 1:55 is 5 vor 2, 4:55 is 5 vor 5, 9:55 is 5 vor 10, etc. Now, let's jump back to where things get a little bit tricky for English speakers. 30 minutes after the hour. English speakers might call 4:30, for instance, 4:30. And German speakers have the word halb, which is very similar, but Germans actually refer to the upcoming hour when they use the word halb. So 4:30 is not 4:30, it's actually 5:30 with the next hour. 6:30 is 6:30. 9:30 is 9:30. 12:30 is 12:30, and so on. There are two more times to deal with on either side of halb. We're going to use the phrase 5 vor with 25 minutes after the hour, but it's not 5 before the hour, it's 5 before the half hour. So again, we need to use the word halb and then refer to the upcoming hour. 7:25, for instance, is 5 vor 7:30. 9:25 is 5 vor 9:30. 11:25 is 5 vor 11:30. The same principle applies at 35 minutes after the hour, but this time we're past the half hour, so we use the phrase 5 nach halb. 1:35 is 5 nach 2:30. 6:35 is 5 nach 7:30. 12:35 is 5 nach 1:30. 3:35 is 5 nach 4:30. Again, keep in mind that you're using the number of the upcoming hour with any phrase involving halb. It's worth mentioning that there is no 24-hour system with the casual method. You would never say something like Viertel nach 13 or 10 vor 22. If you're being casual, then you just use the numbers 1 to 12 for the hours, regardless of AM or PM. Chances are that context will help you anyway. You have German class at 1 in the afternoon, not 1 at night, and you're asleep at 4 AM, not 4 PM, I hope. Finally, let's talk about using times in actual context. If you want to ask the time, you could ask either Wie spät ist es? Or Wie viel Uhr ist es? The answer would then be something like Es ist 14:20 Uhr, or es ist 20 nach 2, depending on whether someone uses the casual or precise method. Regardless of whether you use casual or precise method, you use the phrase es ist for it is, very similar to English. If you want to ask when something happens, you have two options, wann or wie viel Uhr. Now, wann is a very general question word, and so you might get a very general answer like im Sommer or am Montag. If you want to be sure to get an actual time, use the phrase wie viel Uhr, which basically means at what time. Now that word is very important. When you tell when something happens, as in these sentences, you'll use the word for at. 8 Uhr means at 8 o'clock, for instance. And notice that you wouldn't say when you are just giving the time, as in the examples in blue above. If someone asks you what time it is, you don't say it is at 2:20. But if someone asks you when something happens, then you will definitely need the word That's a lot of information, so let's review telling time. When you want to be exact or precise, you'll use the phrase blank Uhr blank, like 2:25 Uhr or 9:50 Uhr. You'll use a 24-hour system to specify AM or PM, so 5 PM is 17 Uhr, add 12 to get the number. 6 PM is 18 Uhr, 7 PM is 19 Uhr, etc. When you want to be casual, you'll use the numbers along with words like vor, nach, viertel, and halb. But remember that halb will refer to the upcoming hour, not the previous one. Finally, the word is very important since it means at. Put before a precise or casual time to tell when something happens.